we are live. Let me handle some housekeeping real quick. And hello to everybody. Today, we're going to talk about what happens when you get the feels running Kriegsspiel. Yep, it is one of those things that definitely happens. Let me just get the link here and share this out with our Patreon or with our Patreon folks. There we go. Publish now. There we are. And I am running a special episode. I like to send this out to everybody, especially our patrons. I want to make sure they're getting plenty of value-added content from us as we talk about Kriegsspiel. There's plenty to talk about, and with all the activity in the International Kriegsspiel Society, there is always something fresh and new and exciting going on. Alright, I'm going to open up the YouTube just to make sure there's no comments. There probably will be some, and if there are, I absolutely want to get those questions. I want to answer your questions. So don't be shy about asking any questions at all that you might have. And I do want to show you folks a couple items here. One is the Patreon, patreon.com/Kriegsspiel. Come here, you help us out. You help out the IKS. Also, this is very important right here. This is Kriegsspiel.org. Just want you to know this is how you join us. You come on here, you click Discord, you go into our Discord, you start chatting with us, you start getting into games, you interact with us. I also want people to know that we have all kinds of resources available, and these resources will allow you to learn about Kriegsspiel and hopefully give you the tools you need to run your own game. Things like that, maps and more. And we actually have to edit this and update it. There's a lot more stuff that we could be putting in here, and we need to go through and add all of that. But there's plenty of stuff here, lots of cool, fun things. So check it out. Unfortunately, this is not free. We do have to pay for these sorts of things. So I just want to remind you to check out Coffee, Kegs, and Kriegsspiel on Patreon and support us there. All right, let's take a look at. Let's get into our content. This is the Harpers Ferry Map, and it's really kind of cool. There was a game on this map that took place on, I think it was Sunday. It was just a few days ago, and it was a very interesting scenario. Basically, some members of the IKS are running their own campaign, and they are running the battles like on Sundays, and there's quite a few participants. It's taking place on this map of Maryland, and the armies are moving here and there and so on, and doing the things that you would expect in a campaign. And in this particular campaign, you have the Union here at Harpers Ferry, and they've got troops in here doing Union things, whatever that may be. They have a defensive line here at the Bolivar Heights, and over here, I can't remember the exact disposition of the line. It may have gone like this, following those heights. But they had plenty of troops, and they were defending this position quite well. Meanwhile, the Confederates had actually succeeded in maneuvering and coming in from three directions. They had a force coming in here, they had a force coming in here, and they had a good-sized force coming in here. So the Confederates were making a full frontal assault here. They had a bunch of artillery. They were trying to blast these Federal dug-in positions here. They had a force here that seemed to me to be a little late to the party. They were arriving and they were establishing artillery positions and other things here, but they were still setting up when I had a look at the game, and the battle was in full swing at that time. And of course, they had units here that were going to make their best effort to cross over that bridge. Now, what ended up happening, and you can actually see this podcast, and you can actually see what I'm going to talk about today unfold in the podcast. And this is the one that we broadcast on Sunday. It mentions the Battle of Harpers Ferry. So if you want to know exactly what I'm talking about here, go back and watch that podcast because it's actually featured right there in the middle of it. But the arsenal was already on fire. Bad things were happening. The Confederates were really pushing here, but I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I wasn't sure if they would break through or not. It did not look like they were going to be able to because the Union had a lot of reinforcements in the area. And not only did they have a lot of reinforcements in the area that were just kind of milling about ready to, plug holes, they also had another whole corps off the map like this, coming onto the map. And I think they were going to follow this path. A treacherous path, if you ask me, because I explained that if I were the Confederates, I would just set up a battery right here. And let me get the right color. I would set up a battery right here and fire down on them, which would at least ruin their day, if not destroy them. So it's going to be a bad deal for them. Alright, let me get my marker squared away and erase all of these drawn lines. And let's talk about what ended up happening. What ended up happening was the Confederates were successful. Even though the arsenal was burned up, the Union forces were forced to surrender. They did, in fact, punch through. They did, in fact, have the enemy surrounded, and they managed to force the Federals to surrender. I did not think that would happen. At the time that I looked at the game, I thought this was going to be a pretty serious Union victory, that they would repulse the Confederates coming in piecemeal on all sides. It looked like they had the battle at Bolivar Heights in hand, but apparently the luck did not favor them. The luck changed or whatever, and they didn't win. And so be it. Okay? But what I want to talk about is something that happened here. We have Union troops defending here, and we had Confederate troops attacking here. And the commander was D.H. Hill. Of course, not the original D.H. Hill, right? We had a player playing the position of D.H. Hill. And those troops went across that bridge and they were bloodily repulsed. Um, I think it was 2 battalions or 2 regiments of troops were sent across, but they were bloodily repulsed. And in fact, the combat was so fierce that the commander himself, D.H. Hill, was struck down during the battle. And the umpire had to figure, because all of this was being determined by dice, the umpire had to decide what happens to this poor commander, which is actually a human player. And he had this system where he said, I'm going to roll a d20, and as long as a 1 does not come up, the player is only wounded. Well, guess what? He rolls the d20, and it's a 1. And so then he's like, well, and this is a problem for all umpires. All umpires, we are very reluctant to put a living, breathing human player out of a game. It's not something we want to do. However, there are occasions where if a player makes decisions that would expose them to extraordinary levels of danger, we go ahead and roll that because it's realistic. There has to be a consequence for exposing yourself to enemy fire, just like there would be historically. And so he decided, well, I'll roll another die, and 4, 5, 6, he's only wounded. 1, 2, 3, he's dead. He rolls the die, and a 3 comes up. And so at that point, and I'm actually live on the podcast, I'm like, he's dead. Kill him. He's out. That's it. He can come back as a replacement, so he doesn't have to quit the game. But his character has been struck down. Fair is fair, right? Well, the umpire, of course, didn't agree with that and decided to spare the life of the unlucky general. Nonetheless, uh, it was very interesting to see that unfold, and that's something that umpires have to struggle with sometimes. Do we put a player out of a game if the dice go against them? What do you do with outlier results and statistics in a game? So That's kind of one of those things that you have to figure out as an umpire, and it is up to umpire discretion. I like to take away some of that discretion, which is why I'm a firm believer in rolling dice and applying the results. And I'll even go so far as to bring the players together to watch the die roll if it's a really small game. But some umpires, they just have a different philosophy about that. Some umpires, they have bigger hearts than me. Okay. And that's just how it goes, all right? For better or for worse. And I don't think that the umpire made a poor decision. I think the umpire made the right decision for the team and the community of players and what he was trying to achieve. So far be it from me to sound critical. All right, let's see here. I want to say hello to Achilles, and Achilles has a question. Might it not have been better to not do the roll at all if you are not willing to kill him regardless? Yeah, I would agree from a time saving perspective. Don't even bother, right? You can just say he's wounded because obviously he's hit. That's why you're rolling the die. If you've already determined that the person is hit, but you're not willing to kill them, then you simply apply the effect of that commander being wounded, whatever that may be. Now, a wounded commander might be one who is unable to give any further orders for the duration of the game. We simply act upon the last orders that they gave, or we act in accord with the situation. But essentially, you do what we call you bot the unit. The unit is now controlled by the umpires. It is botted, like it's run by a robot. That's what that means. And it is no longer under active player control. Okay, that's one way of handling it. Really, though, it's going to be up to the umpire and what they're trying to accomplish and do. But yeah, I think if you're going to roll the dice, you have to have the guts to apply the result. Now, again, I don't want to sound like I'm criticizing the umpire and his decision because he certainly made the right decision for his game and his community. But for me, the right decision is to apply the result. And it is perfectly legitimate for another umpire to say, this isn't the right decision. That's what free Kriegsspiel allows umpires to do. And the base game for all of these systems that we're using is, in fact, free Kriegsspiel. So the umpire is completely within his rights. But for me, I say you roll the die and you apply the result. Otherwise, don't roll the die. You don't roll the die. I know there's people, well, just roll it because I'm curious. I want to see what it would have been. No, you don't roll the die. You either roll the die and you apply the results or you don't. Otherwise, you're just wasting time. You're just playing games on top of playing a game. You know, do what's fun. Do what you want to do. But for me, that's not the right decision for me. So, um, Achilles says it's kind of like what they tell teachers, don't threaten what you are not willing to actually do. Yeah, absolutely. And if you have these conditions built into your scenario, these rules built into your game, if you will, you kind of need to stick with them. Because the one thing that concerns me, and the reason why I use dice in my system, in the SoCal system, is because I want to eliminate arbitrary decision making. I do not want arbitrary decisions in games. I want them to be predicated on player decisions and on the outcomes of the die rolls. If you think that the dice are producing too many outlying results, then you have to adjust your result tables or change your dice or something like that. That's the other thing. It is possible to get outliers in a game, but if you're getting outliers, you're getting too many outliers, okay, then you need to tweak something. You need to adjust that. Outliers are not horrible. There were outliers historically, right? There are these cases in history where one person holds off the entire enemy heroically for an extended period of time, which turns out to make all the difference in a battle. That did happen historically. We can all look at the 20th Maine, right? The 20th Maine, by all rights, should have been pushed off that mountaintop. Instead, they did the unexpected. They charged downhill and they captured a bunch of Confederates. Okay, whatever. So there are outliers. But for the most part, you want things to kind of fall within what we call a stochastic range, which is a predictable range of results. And, things should go pretty much the way they should go. And if you have a lot of outliers, then you need to tweak something. All right, let's take a look now at what happens here. So D.H. Hill survives, And then there's commentary, there's debrief, there's all kinds of things that happen afterwards, right? Well, this morning I opened up the Discord, and the player who was playing DHO was a new player, by the way, had caught a case of the feels for their avatar and for their pieces. And they rightfully felt bad that a bunch of their troops were lost in what was ultimately a foolish attack across a position that was easily defended by the enemy, which, of course, in this case is this bridge. Should not have done it, or should have done it only after intense artillery bombardment. Something like that, right? But it was done. The decision was made, and a player had a little Burnside Bridge moment, and the player even was wounded in the battle. And so the player was lamenting their decision. And that's important in this case because this wasn't a one-off game. This is a campaign. So in the next battle of this campaign, that division is going to be fighting at reduced strength because of the losses incurred by this decision. And that's really cool. That is absolutely cool because what happened here was the player kind of got emotional, and this happened in real life. Now, I'm not going to suggest that the player was crying or pulling their hair out and was like, I don't want to play anymore or whatever. No, it's not like that. But they were keenly and acutely aware of the consequences of their error, of their decision. The heck of it is when you call that decision, when you give that order, you have no way of knowing whether or not the order is going to work in your favor or go completely against you. And that's part of the fog of war. And that's what makes Kriegsspiel so emotional, is because you have a fog of war circumstance, you have much greater anxiety. You don't know what you're walking into sometimes. You might think, well, we can cross this bridge, and you don't see the enemy waiting to ambush. And that is how the game simply works. And in a campaign scenario where the losses carry over, you will have a player kick themselves for the decisions they make. I had one game, it was played face to face, where I had a player get completely surrounded by the enemy and his entire brigade surrendered. It was completely wiped out, surrendered. And that was really, really hard for that player to manage, to handle that. And there are some players who have a hard time dealing with losing. And what you have to remind these people, well, there's a number of things you tell them. One is that, you don't control all the variables. This isn't like a board game. This isn't like tic-tac-toe or chess, where your only error is maybe you didn't think enough moves ahead. This is something where you can make all the right decisions and still lose. You can absolutely be defeated by circumstances completely beyond your control. The very scenario itself, while theoretically it's supposed to be fair in all cases and winnable by both sides, you could be put into a scenario where your troops are not going to survive. It's going to be impossible for the troops to survive. What do you do in those cases? You play it out, and your attitude and your reaction to that is also part of the exercise. And I like to talk about the most famous Kriegsspiel in the world, which is a fictional Kriegsspiel. It's the Kobayashi Maru. That is in the movie Star Trek, right? Where the young Captain Kirk, who is learning how to captain his starship or whatever, is put into a no-win simulation. And how does Captain Kirk react to that? Well, Captain Kirk cheats to beat the simulation. Because he does not believe there's a no-win situation. He believes that every situation you can win, and it's just a matter of tweaking the variables in your favor, even if it means cheating, And it makes some sense. I get the attitude, right? But in Kriegsspiel, your umpires could set up a situation where there's not much you can do, and you're going to just have to roll with it anyway. And that's part of the fun. Getting that pit in your stomach, having that anxiety, worrying about what's going to happen next, living with the consequences of your decisions that are always going to be literally a roll of the dice. Hey, that's why people play Kriegsspiel. It's not something you can sit there and engineer an advantage by looking at the tables. It's something that just kind of plays out, and not everything is under your control or even within your power to know. Okay, some questions here. Let's see here. Achilles says, I like this campaign, what I've seen of it so far, though. I hope the Antietam battle will be on YouTube. Yes, I'll work with the master umpire on that to see if we can get that live streamed. In fact, I may even be able to broadcast it myself. Maybe I'll even be able to announce the battle. We'll see. I can't promise anything because I don't know what my schedule will be like on that day. But yes, we will absolutely try to record and show this game for everybody. And then Achilles adds, this is how you learn, which is, after all, the point of Kriegsspiel. Yes, remember, Kriegsspiel is a training exercise, so the purpose of it is instruction, learning, knowledge, growth, development. So it's absolutely critical that you learn how to deal with your losses just as much as you learn how to win. And one of the things Achilles says is you have command but not control. I think we even have that on one of our T-shirts in the store. In Kriegsspiel, you're in command, but you're not in control, and it's a great reminder. So there you have it. Anyway, so what do you do when players catch the feels? Hey, you just remind them, hey, this is what's going on. You don't have a lot that's under your control. You really only get to make a few big decisions. And I talk about this all the time. Your big decisions are, how do you get to the battle? Where do you commit your troops? Where do you put your reserve? And then what do you do, win, lose, or draw, after the battle is decided? And that's kind of it. You don't get to micromanage your forces. You don't get to constantly control and maneuver your units. We do have players who will give orders every single turn. It's kind of annoying, actually, when they're giving orders and nothing has changed, but they're constantly changing their orders. That's a little, really? Come on, guys. On the other hand, I'm kind of like a rock. I'll give orders, I'll create a plan, and then I just kind of stick to it until I have concrete information that there's a problem and I have to tweak the plan. I have a hard time changing my plan. That's my own personal weakness. So I'm on the other extreme. I just give one order and that's it. To the point that I even have a hard time communicating with subordinates and peers in command. I figure, why do I have to? Because nothing has changed. I have nothing to report. And that's kind of, maybe it's a reaction to seeing so many players constantly communicate, constantly changing their orders when there's nothing to communicate and nothing to do, nothing to justify the change in orders. But they just do it because I guess they feel like unless they're doing that, they're not contributing or they're not commanding their troops. But it's a thing that happens, and it's very interesting. So you just have to have that talk with the players sometimes. And as a player, you have to remind yourself, I'm in command, but I'm not in control. Everybody is going to have those games, those moments where you send the troops across the bridge, you get the bloody nose, you suffer the losses, and well, there are consequences to making that decision. But that's okay. And how you respond to those consequences is really where the learning and the growth and the development that Kriegsspiel is intended to impart to people, that's where it really happens. So there you go. That's where the magic happens, right? Okay, I just want to remind everybody one more time before I wrap up, please support us on Patreon just because this stuff is expensive and we appreciate the support and the help. And please check out the website. Remember, you can join us on, I clicked home, let's see it turn over. You can join us on the Discord. You click here on the Discord. If you want to communicate with me, you click dispatch. You send me an email directly. You can, fill in all your contact information. If you want to send me an anonymous message, maybe you think I'm awful. You're like, your podcast is boring. You can totally submit that. I'll get it. I won't know who sent it. It works brilliantly. But that's why that's here. This is here because if you give a man a mask, he'll tell you the truth. And this is for you to give me the truth, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Absolutely, it's all welcome because that's how we improve. And of course, we do have a shop. You can shop for merchandise. I've edited all the prices though, so they're rock bottom. We don't make more than like $1 or $2 on any of these items, but we do have them. And all the proceeds there do go to support us. but I would also suggest you support us here on Patreon. It's a great way to make a difference for the IKS and participate. If you don't have the money to support us, no big deal. Get in, participate, be involved in the games, and you catch us when you do. No big deal. All right, let's see here. A couple quotes before I wrap up. Justin says, I'm the other extreme. I want to know what's going on, even if there's nothing going on, because outside my immediate line of sight, all I know is what I'm told. And that's a great argument. Yeah, there are people who want to know even when there's nothing going on. Sometimes when there's nothing there, that's also valuable information. In fact, that information can be equally as important as what is there, knowing that there's nothing there. So, again, you have to kind of balance that. But I would say if you ever play with me and you don't hear from me, assume there's nothing there at all times. When something is there, I will communicate. Um, and Achilles says to Justin, I agree. There we go. My headset gives out every show, doesn't it? I need a new headset. He says, I agree. I always think it's better to know more than less. All right, well, there you have it, folks. We're going to wrap up. Thank you for watching this special episode. I hope it was entertaining and insightful for you. I will be on this Sunday at 9 a.m. regular time with our regular episode. I'm also going to try to do a special episode on Thursday. I'm going to talk to the guy who's running this campaign if I can, and we're going to kind of recap this battle because I want to know how the heck did the Union lose the Battle of Harpers Ferry, and who the heck was responsible for burning up the arsenal. We'll learn that on Thursday. All right, we'll see you then. Take care, and